called several times. I missed that. Can you reinstitute that and get it going
All right,
again?
I'll tell you what.
I'm getting rusty here, Hannity.
If I could manage my show better and get the mail in and get the Hate Hannity hotline in, I'd be a better host.
Hannity, great show tonight, as always.
All right. Have a great show.
Right. I'm Laura Ingraham. This is the Ingraham Angle from Washington tonight. A remarkable, yet, I don't know, it's a totally predictable turn of events in the Jussie Smollett case. The Empire actor now officially indicted on a felony charge for filing a false police report. A live update from the ground and shocking new video from Chicago just moments away. Also tonight, less than a week after Trump's new AG was confirmed, reports that Mueller's investigation could be coming to an end next week. Wow. We have exclusive reaction there. Plus, what do John Wayne and Barack Obama have in common? They're both part of a can't miss Seen and Unseen with Raymond Arroyo. But we begin with a breaking news alert out of Chicago. The Cook County State's Attorney has just filed a felony charge against Smollett with felony disorderly conduct. That's what it's called, for filing a false police report. Mike Tobin joining us now from outside Chicago PD with all the details. Mike.
Well, you just stole a little bit of my lead there, but Jussie Smollett, star, singer, and now suspect, charged with that disorderly conduct, a felony in this case. We've got a release from his legal team, reading as follows. Like any other citizen, Mr. Smollett enjoys a presumption of innocence, particularly when there's been an investigation like this one, where information, both true and false, has been repeatedly leaked. Given these circumstances, we intend to conduct a thorough investigation and mount an aggressive defense. The Osundario brothers, once considered potential suspects, testified for 2.5 hours before a grand jury today. Their attorney says they were paid in the alleged hoax, but the payment doesn't fit the narrative that we know. She says the brothers are speaking to investigators because they had a change of heart and determined that the truth needs to come out. What is their disposition right now? They've been through a lot.
They've been through a lot, absolutely. I think the American people has been through a lot, too. So they were eager to tell their story.
And Gloria Schmidt, the attorney, says that Jussie Smollett must have trouble sleeping at night and he needs to come clean. Chicago police say they are in touch with Smollett's legal team and they are negotiating terms for his, or they say they're negotiating a reasonable surrender for him to turn himself in. He's got a bond hearing at 1:30 tomorrow. Laura?
Mike, thanks for that report. We'll be following it all throughout the night. We really appreciate it. And now, Victimhood U. That's the focus of tonight's angle. As we see polls showing young people slouching towards socialism, it got me thinking, why is this happening? Why would they embrace a system that has proven itself such a colossal failure? Think about it. A contraction of liberty, a scarcity of goods, scarce medicine, and power concentrated in the hands of governmental authorities. Well, socialism chic can, I think, be in part attributed to its new spokesman, people like Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Because the key to understanding this fanatical fad is that when you're a socialist, facts are kind of irrelevant. Now, why? Well, they're irrelevant because the ends, a supposedly more equal society, justify the means.
If people want to really blow up one figure here or one word there, I would argue that they're missing the forest for the trees. I think that there's a lot of people more concerned about being precisely, factually, and semantically correct than about being morally right.
Okay, but what is the source of your morality, AOC? Well, it's morality according to whom? Marx, Engels, someone else? And I thought we weren't supposed to impose our morality on others when it came to issues like life or marriage, but when a liberal claims moral superiority, all the rules change. Now consider the situation on campuses today. Free thought and free speech have been marginalized or altogether obliterated. And they're marginalized or obliterated in favor of forced adherence to the ever-changing leftist credo. A credo where Marxism trumps the free market and trigger warnings beat down free thought. The Young America's Foundation just released a study of courses that are being offered at some Ivy League colleges. A few of these are real howlers. Check them out. Last semester at Columbia, you could have taken a class called Fascism, Aesthetics and Politics. The election of President Donald Trump has renewed interest in the examination of fascism as an ideology, as a political movement, and as a form of governance. Last fall at Cornell, students took Histories of the Apocalypse, from Nostradamus to Nuclear Winter. Brexit, immigration, and the election of Donald Trump have all been recently heralded as signs of an imminent apocalypse. Very understated. And then at Harvard, why not pay $70,000 a year in tuition to study, quote, journalism in the age of Trump? President Trump's declared war on fake news, his attacks on the press as enemies of the people, as well as secular changes in technology and the ways in which the news is produced and delivered have combined to undermine the very notion of truth. The political indoctrination is one aspect of what universities are doing to mess with young minds, but there's a lot more. Parents also pay hundreds of thousands of dollars in total for their kids to marinate in an entitled, it's kind of a pseudo-intellectual grievance culture. Professors and administrators have founded their own type of religion, whose adherents are required to embrace manufactured anger and complete oppression. Now consider the case of a small school called the Evergreen State College. Documentarian Mike Nana captured this rise of leftist authoritarianism in real time. And he interviewed professors who could see the ideology of racism and white privilege suffocating free expression on campus. Now, check this out. These are actual faculty members of Evergreen State College.
Racism exists today in both traditional and modern forms. Racism is an institutionalized, multi-layered, multi-level system that distributes unequal power and resources between white people and people of color, as socially identified, and disproportionately benefits whites. The racial status quo is comfortable for most whites. Therefore, anything that maintains white comfort is suspect.
Well, these professor activists have a very ambitious agenda and a very dark, ominous view of life in 21st century America.
We galvanize white privilege in the form of curriculum, exalting white canons of fine art, literature, theory, and scientific thinking. More so, if we don't examine how those canons are made.
Well, these people sound like they're cult members, not faculty members.
I believe Evergreen can create a more vibrant community of anti-racist activists on our staff and faculty and among our students, if we break our 45-year pattern of occasionally turning toward these issues briefly with deep but short-run commitment that fades, and fades.
I'm fading. Okay. It doesn't matter that students or faculty on campus don't really show signs of racism, or it doesn't matter that they engage in racism, because to this thinking, racism is just in the air. It's in the water of our country's founding. So anyone who fails to stand and fight against this oppressive backdrop is guilty. So minorities in this view are cast as perpetual victims, and the universities then reward them for wearing the I'm oppressed chips on their shoulders. Here's just a sample of what the groupthink sounds like. This is a meeting of the Evergreen State College Equity Council, and the guest speaker, Robin D'Angelo.
There's a sea of people engaged in a shared delusion, and then there's a few people witnessing the delusion and isolated, unable to exchange words or anything. That sense of being alone in a crowd is profound.
The anti-racist frame understands racism as a system. While individual players partake in it, it's not dependent on individual players. Right? It's embedded in the fabric of the society, and it functions to ensure an unequal distribution of basically everything between people of color as a whole and white people as a whole.
Now, note the almost religious certitude that these radicals possess. This is their religion, because they are the oracles, and anyone who does not accept their ideology, their religious fervor is simply unjust. You're a racist if you don't accept it. And thus, you must be resisted and driven into silence on a college campus at all costs. This is a kind of mental totalitarianism, and it's not just confined to faculty meetings or classrooms. Students are being brainwashed into accepting this groupthink. Now, a few weeks ago, Dinesh D'Souza spoke at our alma mater of Dartmouth College and was greeted this way.
Racist! Go home, 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 racist!
That's very tolerant, isn't it? Now, how can they get away with treating an Indian, an immigrant, and a person of color, let alone an alum of the college, that way? Well, because as a conservative, Dinesh does not count. He doesn't buy into their oppression narrative, so he's just as guilty as a white, unwoke lacrosse player who grew up in Greenwich, who goes to an Ivy League school. And my friends, this victimhood obsession, of course, has infected now society at large, because they want us all to live on their college campus. Think about this Jussie Smollett case. Even when his wild allegations couldn't be substantiated, even after it appears that Smollett himself organized the attack that he initially blamed on MAGA-hatted wearing racists, and even after he was charged with filing a false police report, in the eyes of these folks, none of it matters. He ultimately gets a pass in their eyes because the story fit the left's narrative. And he is morally right in their eyes, even if kind of confused and sad regarding these current set of facts. And regardless of facts anyway, Trump and his followers are, according to them, violent racists. And if you disagree with that, well, you're a racist yourself. Playing by the university rule book, well, dissent is not allowed. And liberal victims, fake or otherwise, are entitled to mercy. 20th Century Fox issued a statement today reading, Jussie Smollett continues to be a consummate professional on set, and as we have previously stated, he is not being written out of the show. We'll see if that changes with the news tonight. I'm telling you, redemption is almost limitless when you are a liberal, I guess. The governor and lieutenant governor of Virginia know all about that. Roseanne, though, wow, she's still waiting for her letter of apology. As parents, we have to use these examples to remind our children of what is expected of them. Teach them to respect themselves and, of course, their fellow man. To halt the spread of this victimhood menace, we have to teach kids to be self-reliant and self-sufficient. Because if you're a victim, you're going to need to be saved. And the left believes your savior is the government. I say no thanks. I'll leave that to Jesus Christ. Thank you very much. But we have all, put this all aside for a moment, we have all been given gifts by the Almighty. A soul, a heart and mind, capable of changing things for the better and making good choices out of our own free will. And when you start to cling to victim status, you're just giving away your power. You're letting others define you. We Americans, we're a lot better than that. And our kids deserve better than what they're being fed on college campuses. So let's expose the frauds and encourage more personal responsibility. And I bet we'll all be happier. And that's the angle. All right, we want to get back to this breaking news on Jussie Smollett now. And what do community leaders in Chicago think about their city being used as part of a hoax? And this kind of fits into the victimhood mentality we've been talking about tonight. And where do the Chicago police go from here? To help us answer those questions, we're joined from Chicago by Tio Hardman. He's the CEO of Violence Interrupters and former LAPD detective and Fox News contributor Mark Furman. Tio, I want to start with you. Now, you're saying that community leaders, most of them knew from the start that this was fake. So why were so many national politicians, top leaders in the Democrat Party, and celebrities fooled?
Well, I was born and raised in Chicago, and I know violence quite well here in Chicago. So I was one of the first community leaders that put this out on one of my LinkedIn posts. I wrote a post about it because nobody really, if you get beat up for real in Chicago, nobody gets pimp slapped in Chicago. Nobody gets a pass, in other words. And stories about people pouring bleach on somebody, that doesn't happen in Chicago. And making a comment about Chicago being Make America Great Again country, that does not happen in Chicago. So if Jesse, stays the attack, he's dead wrong because he's receiving all the attention. And we just had a 1-year-old child, a toddler shot in the head named Baby Chase, and he's not getting any attention. And we have a 14 to 16% homicide clearance rate. And if Jesse is guilty of the charges, he's dead wrong because he's taking much needed attention from a serious problem in Chicago.
Mark, pick up on that for a moment. 24 police officers were apparently assigned to this Smollett case. 24. And as Tio said, and we had a chance to meet Tio when we did our special in Chicago some months back, that is an appallingly low rate of solved murders in the city. Yet, you got 24 people in total assigned to this case?
Well, Laura, just not 24 people. You have 24 detectives, and taking 24 detectives off of their caseload, taking them away from cases that are actually happening while they're doing this Smollett case is just absurd. I have never seen 24 detectives on anything short of a serial killer case. That is obscene amount of detectives for this kind of a case, but the city officials wanted this out of the press as quickly as possible, so they wanted the suspects arrested and move on as quickly as possible. I understand that, but once they started investigating this, they started uncovering exactly what it was. They knew it was a hoax, as your guest would just described. This smelled from the beginning. It didn't look like a street crime. They didn't act like a street crime. Nothing about it was a street crime.
But let's go back to why this happened, though. Mark, you're 100% right. Tio's right. But why were so many in the country at large, beyond the confines of Streeterville and maybe Englewood and South Side LA, Chicago, why were so many people willing to buy into this, Tio? Because when I think
that's easy.
Go ahead, Mark, and then Tio.
Right.
Mark,
that's easy. I mean,
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, Mark. Go ahead, and then Tio.
It's easy to see exactly how this happened. When you've been on the street, you understand what things look like, what they feel like, what the sense of the crime. And when you're not, when you're removed, when you're a celebrity or a politician, and you're removed from everything that happens in the real world, then you're going to buy into it because it fits your agenda and you're willing to jump in with both feet because it's what you want to hear. You want to champion somebody for your cause.
Yeah. Tio, I want to play something from the Good Morning America interview that Smollett did about whether people would have believed him more if he were not black. Let's watch.
I don't need some MAGA hat as the cherry on top of some racist sundae. It feels like if I had said it was a Muslim or a Mexican or someone black, I feel like the doubters would have supported me a lot much more.
The good news is that the
Senate... And that says a lot about the place that we are in our country right now.
Okay, so that's it. He's talking about the perpetrators, Tio. So he was making a statement about the country as a whole, and that I find to be probably the most offensive thing about this, in addition to taking all the time away from the police. Tio.
Well, right now, Jesse needs some help. He's crying out for help. Something else is going on. Normally, when people act out like this, it's just a symptom of a major problem. And I would like to suggest that Terrence Howard, who plays his father on Empire, now he may have to serve as a role model, father-like figure in real life to Jesse, because right now something else is going on. I've been in Chicago all my life, and like I said, I've never ever heard of an attack like this. And Jesse should stop playing games with the people if he's wrong. alone because he owes everybody in Chicago an apology due to the fact that we have people that are shot every day in Chicago, people that are killed at least every other day in Chicago. Right now, from January 2019 until today, we have about 35 people have been killed in Chicago. Where's the news at about people being killed? He's taking resources from much-needed communities where violence is running rampant out here. So justice wrong.
I'm frankly not. Let me just say this, guys, to both of you. I'm not interested in his cry for help. I am interested in the cry for help from the family of that one-year-old child who was killed.
Yes.
So Jesse's cry for help, I'm not frankly all that thrilled to talk about. I'm not really worried about him. He'll figure it out. But I am worried about the people, Mark, who don't get the benefit of the news coverage and the focus that he managed to galvanize because his political narrative fit what the left-wing media and the celebrity culture demanded. Mark, close it out.
I couldn't agree with you more. We really don't care why Mr. Smollett decided to do this, to create this hoax. We don't really care what his career was, either in the downward spiral or he was worried about being replaced. It really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter why. But it does matter that he thinks that he is more important than the people of Chicago, the people of the United States, the president, every detective that's working a case, every person that's on the police department that has had to take their time and energy to solve a crime that the victim actually created himself. It's disgusting.
It is just, they've got to throw the book at people who do this because it has a toxic, poisonous effect on our discourse, and it's an attempt to tar this country in a very ominous, terrible light, and it is infuriating on so many levels. There are real hate crimes out there, and this was obviously a fraud. Both of you, thank you so much. Coming up, could the black cloud of the Mueller probe be lifted as early as next week? We're going to tell you exactly what the end of the Russia investigation really means, plus a new development to our reporting from last night of a former Alabama woman begging to come back to the U.S. after becoming an ISIS bride. Isn't that sweet? Did our show have a role? Well, that's next. Oh, we have an update quickly on the story of one of those ISIS brides who's now begging to come back to the United States. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says that this Alabama woman, Hoda Muthana, will not be allowed to return, adding, quote, she is not a U.S. citizen. She does not have any legal basis, no valid U.S. passport, no right to a passport, nor any visa to travel to the United States. Well, her family's attorneys dispute those claims about the woman's citizenship and says she was born in Jersey. They also claim that Muthana is an innocent victim.
I think Huda, in that sense, is another victim of Daesh. She resents them. She hates them. She hates what they brainwashed her into becoming. And she honestly is tremendously relieved now that she sees the light and is speaking out against them. I think, in a sense, it's very cathartic for her that she's finally lifted this burden off her shoulders.
Oh, and that's the care sign is in the background. Did you see that? Oh, great. Remember, this is same 24-year-old who doesn't think she deserves any punishment for shacking up with not one but 3 ISIS terrorists.
Do you think you deserve a punishment for what you did?
Maybe therapy lessons, maybe a process that will ensure us that we'll never do this again.
Maybe we can give her equine therapy. Well, last night on this show, Piers Morgan talked about her completely lack of empathy.
Now she wants to think, hey, I'm sorry. I know that the ISIS dream in Syria is over. I know that my ISIS terrorist husbands have now been killed, and I want to come home because I'm now a reformed character. I'm not buying any of it. She remains a very clear, a present danger to Americans and to American lives.
Well, she's currently being held at a refugee camp in Syria, and apparently only came to the realization that joining ISIS was wrong this past Sunday. We're going to keep following this story for you. And also coming up now on to another important story.
That'll be totally up to the new Attorney General. He's a tremendous man, a tremendous person who really respects this country and respects the Justice Department. So that'll be totally up to him.
Well, it's his second year now. The reports reveal it could be wrapped up as early as next week. And once the Mueller report has been received by newly minted Attorney General Bill Barr, he will then decide what to give to Congress, if anything, and to the public. The investigation initiated by a bunch of rogue FBI agents has been an anchor, kind of an anvil, around Donald Trump's presidency since his earliest months in office. Here to unpack all of this for us is John Yoo, former Deputy Assistant Attorney General for Bush 43. Now, John, a lot of folks on other networks contend tonight that Bill Barr is forcing an end to this investigation. What do you think?
I think that's far, far from the truth. Under the regulations under which Mueller was appointed, he's going to complete his investigation and submit a report to Bill Barr. Bill Barr, as Attorney General, then has to write his own report to Congress, and Barr is the one who's going to decide how much of the report to make public. Personally, I hope he makes all of it public, or as much as he can without revealing any secrets or grand jury testimony, because I think it's going to clear President Trump. I haven't seen any evidence of President Trump committing any crime, and so when that report comes out, that's going to, I think, clear him. The faster and better and more that's available, I think the better for President Trump and the country, so we can get moving on to other important issues.
The former FBI acting director, Andy McCabe, is hawking a book, and he seems to be contradicting himself between interviews. Let's watch.
Rosenstein was actually openly talking about whether there was a majority of the cabinet who would vote to remove the president.
That's correct. Counting votes. Or possible votes.
Did he present that idea to other cabinet officials? Because, as you know, he had to count heads to see, do I have the votes to remove the president?
Not that I'm aware of. I have no indication of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little fuzzy there for him. I mean, the counting votes, will present, not counting votes.
Well, first of all, it shows how over their heads these people were.
Well, that's a very benign way of looking at it. Exactly. McCabe's over his head. He lied 3 times to the Inspector General.
No, McCabe, I don't think, is over his head. I think Rosenstein's over his head and panicked and allowed these people who are clearly biased against President Trump to occupy the vacuum and push, I think, this insane idea to trigger the 25th Amendment against the sitting president who's able to perform the functions of the job. So I think what you see here...
Well, one of them is lying. One of them, Rosenstein said it never happened. This guy said it happened, but he's a proven liar. But it's pretty embarrassing, this whole story. The idea that an FBI director or acting director should be taking part in any meeting, it's just, it's unconscionable. But it demonstrates why this investigation was a fraud from the beginning.
Well, look, McCabe has already been found to have lied to investigators. Rosenstein, if you read carefully what he says, has not actually denied it. Rosenstein has actually said, well, I didn't actually carry out the wiretapping. He never denies that he talked to McCabe about it. I cannot believe that the highest echelons of our Justice Department law enforcement officials were considering trying to remove the president under constitutional provision, which is for presidents who are sick or ill or have been shot.
Yeah, well, and anytime he's pressed on it, he always falls back on these generalities. Well, he fired Comey. He's totally entitled to fire Comey. All the things he claimed. I want to play something. This is from our own Judge Napolitano on with Shepard Smith about whether this behavior could rise to the level of obstruction of justice. This alleged phone call with acting Attorney General Mark Whitaker to put back a judge who had recused himself on the Cohen case in the Southern District of New York. Let's watch.
The phone call would be evidence of what? Corrupt intent. That is, an effort to use the levers of power of the government for a corrupt purpose. Would that be obstruction? Yes. It would be attempted obstruction. It would only be obstruction if it succeeded. But if you try to interfere with a criminal prosecution that may knock at your own door by putting your ally in there, that is clearly an attempt to obstruct justice.
Look, I'm very fond of Judge Napolitano, but I think he's just wrong on this one. And he's actually insulting the personal ethics of the United States Attorney and President Trump. There's no reason to think the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, probably the most important federal prosecutor in the country outside Washington, would take that prosecution over and deliberately tank it to protect the president. That is an accusation against the ethics of the prosecutors who are working for him. So I think Judge Napolitano is just getting a little bit overexcited about this, alleged phone call that's on the front.
But the president is entitled to have an opinion. So if the president invents, it's like, why is this guy recusing himself? This is ridiculous. Why are people recusing? I'm just guessing. I bet that's what he said. If he said anything,
that's
what he
more
said.
Than that. The president's entitled to more than an opinion. He's entitled to appoint the officers who are subordinate.
Who aren't going to be recusing themselves every 5 seconds.
Exactly. Under the Constitution, he's the chief prosecutor. All the prosecutors work for him. He gets to appoint the people who serve in office.
Where are we right now? I mean, this Mueller thing's been going on for 2 years. We get a sense it's winding down. it doesn't seem like there's anything. Not only there's nothing there, most likely, but the entire basis for starting this investigation seems politically motivated.
I think it goes back to the first segment you had. It goes back to Rosenstein being panicked over his head, and McCabe and these biased FBI agents sort of filling the vacuum and launching an investigation that's not clear, could have just been handled by regular prosecutors, regular DOJ, and it would have been over a long time ago. So I think what's going to happen is the report will get issued. I hope Attorney General Barr releases it to the public. I think it's in Trump's advantage for everyone to see that. And then the form will really move to Congress. If Congress wants to try to launch impeachment investigations,
good luck.
Let them have at it. Then.
We'll remember what happened when they did that to Bill Clinton. Didn't work out so well for the Republicans. John Yoo, thank you so much. And coming up, the pathetic culture war ensnaring a Hollywood star who's been dead for 40 years, and Obama is speaking out on the culture. And I am astounded. Yes, seen and unseen with Raymond Arroyo next. It's time for our seen and unseen segment where we expose the big cultural stories of the day. And tonight's segment has it all: John Wayne, vampires, and Barack Obama. Joining us now with details, Raymond Arroyo, Fox News contributor and New York Times best-selling author of, let me see that book, the brand new book out, I'm holding it, Will Wilder and the Amulet of Power, and we're on page 132, and I promise that's how much we've read. It is so good. All right.
Do book report.
All right, Raymond, why is John Wayne and the famous statue under assault this week?
Famous statue, Laura. We all know the famous kissing sailor image after the war, Alfred Eisenstadt's photograph of VJ Day. When the war came to an end, George Mendonça, the sailor captured in the image, thought it was an important memento of the war.
The picture is still known around the whole world as a symbol of the end of World War II. This is one of the good things that ever happened to me.
Mendoza died this week, God bless him. In the wake of his death, a statue capturing that moment was defaced with the words #MeToo, the implication being that the nurse in the picture did not consent to be kissed. This is related to an internet sensation. Trolls dug up a 1971 Playboy interview with John Wayne, the acting legend. In the interview, he refers to gays using a pejorative, says Indians were selfishly trying to keep this land, and he's glad we took it from them. And then he says this: with a lot of blacks, there's quite a bit of resentment along with their dissent, and possibly rightfully so. But we can't all of a sudden get down on our knees and turn everything over to the leadership of the blacks. I believe in white supremacy, Duke said, until the blacks are educated to the point of responsibility. Now, Laura, what I don't like about both of these stories is we're judging the past in light of shifting moral, ethic, and cultural codes of today. We can't do that.
Well, they're either defacing statues or pulling them down. Yeah. So and I've said this before, I'm going to keep saying this. This is what the Taliban does. The Taliban used to rip down historical markers, destroy churches. ISIS did the same thing, does the same thing. They don't want any vestige of what was.
Well,
even if it's bad, they don't want any vestige. Even if it's good, they don't want anything.
But these are two iconic images of America.
Right.
John Wayne and the sailor, the release, freedom. They're impugning America. They're impugning America. And if you want to settle a racist score, if you want to go settle scores, talk to Jesse Smollett. Go talk to the governor and lieutenant governor of Virginia. They got plenty of scores to settle there. Deal with the living, not the dead. We can't go back to a man who's been dead for 40 years and an interview 50 years old. It's just,
that interview
born in 1907.
Okay, yeah, but by the way, that interview has been out there for 40, 50 years.
At least. Laura, on HBO's Silicon Valley, some of these high-tech titans get blood transfusions from young people in an effort to stave off age. Now, this is actually based in reality. There are tech moguls who are obsessed with this practice of trying to stay young. Well, the FDA has come out claiming that this young blood movement, which is supposed to help memory loss and slow aging, is fraudulent. They claim that it's dangerous and could lead to infections, allergic, respiratory, and cardiovascular risks. What do you make of these vampires?
Okay.
Elderly vampires.
They obviously don't believe that the next place they'll go would be better. Number one, right? So but it's like sleeping in the oxygen chamber. Okay, it's like, guess what? As Thurgood Marshall said, he said, I'm getting old. Things are falling off me. That's what happens.
Rather than taking blood from the young, spend time with them. You can capture their spirit. That's what people should be doing.
Yeah, don't they know that the aging involves in your cellular makeup? You know your cells are dying right
We're
now.
running out of time.
All right, former
I'm dying.
President Barack Obama spoke at my brother's Keeper event this week and talked pop culture and its effect on young men.
Let's face it, a lot of hip-hop and rap music is built around me showing how I got more money than you. I can disrespect you and you can't do nothing about it. I'm going to talk about you and punk you. If you are very confident about your sexuality, you don't have to have 8 women around you twerking.
I like how his sexuality. Is that a Hawaiian accent?
Yeah, he kind of gets.
Hey, Chicago. But he's good on this. He has been
very good.
He has been good, and my Brother's Keeper initiative was one of the best things he did as president.
I agree.
actually liked it.
And his example as a father.
A great dad, and I like the fact that he's talking about the hip hop.
I hope he
Some of it
uses
is fun,
his
but
perch at Netflix, his production deal, to put forward positive images for men across the political.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what race you are. It doesn't matter. All right, and before we go, tell me about this fan. I know the book because we're reading the book. As my sons and I are reading the book. Maria, sorry, she's not, but she's a little older. But they love this book. Just out. Will Wilder, The Amulet of Power.
Well, let me tell you. First, it's an adventure for the whole family. I love, and I'll show you some of these images, Laura. I've been getting images from young readers. When I go on tour and I see these kids, how excited they are about having a book, the adventure they go on. This is about a 12-year-old who does what we all wish we could have done at that age. Get an amulet that gives us superpowers. It's based in Samson, which is the model of all these superheroes. But what I love about it, it ends up being a discussion and an adventure about the true source of power and strength, where it comes from. And I think that battle between good and evil, kids recognize it. It's good to lean into it and explain it.
I will just say one thing. It
With
begins at the Louvre.
It does. At World War II.
In World War II, at the Louvre, and he has an ability to see evil.
Yes. Wonder where that
I'm in Washington. I see evil all the time.
Me
Big
too.
deal, Will Wilder, in your pith helmet. All right. Grayman, congratulations. And does the American left care more about the civil liberties of illegals or keeping America safe? The latest examples of illegal crime are unreal. They're never covered. We're going to cover it with Tom Homan next. Plus, my Twitter smackdown of the day is still to come. A certain Democratic congressman felt my wrath. Oh, it's so nice, though. Stay there.
We will have a national emergency, and we will then be sued, and they will sue us in the Ninth Circuit, even though it shouldn't be there, and we will possibly get a bad ruling, and then we'll get another bad ruling, and then we'll end up in the Supreme Court.
He's like Karnak from Carson. He had it all down. Of course he was right. The 16 left-wing states suing President Trump. And of course, it's all been assigned to Oakland, California-based Judge Haywood Gilliam, an Obama appointee. Perfect. This all played out just as constitutional expert John Eastman and I predicted last night. But you can find a district court judge, as we've seen in all these challenges, John, to the president's temporary travel ban, so many other moves. You can find a district court judge to issue a nationwide injunction thwarting the president's policy, at least for a time.
Well, they have, and they judge shop. They brought this in the Northern District of California, where there's not a single judge that was appointed by a Republican.
Oh, I got to get more judges on that court. The legal merits of the case are one thing, but there are plenty of glaring national security examples to support the president's move. Just this week, 6 illegals linked to a Mexican cartel arrested in North Carolina for drug trafficking, meth and heroin. Now, the massive operation including transporting large amounts of coke and meth across state lines. In Louisiana, U.S. Customs Border Protection arrested a convicted child sex offender who had been previously deported. Heberub Hernandez Martinez was convicted in 2009 of first-degree sexual offense involving a child and served 84 months, in prison. After his release, they say he was deported, I guess in 2016, but then he made his way back here. Joining me now to discuss is Tom Homan, former acting director of ICE, Fox News contributor. Tom, we just learned tonight that House Democrats plan on introducing their own resolution blocking Trump's border in his border wall plan. Thoughts?
That doesn't surprise me. Look, the president had it right from the beginning, right? He knew he's going to be sued. Everything he's done since he's been president to try to secure this border and try to enforce immigration laws Every time he has made a move, he's been sued. And he was right. Remember him and Chief Justice had it out over some tweets saying, well, the Ninth Circuit's weak and they're going to shut.
Totally right. John Roberts should be ashamed of himself for saying what he said.
Sure enough, they went to the Ninth Circuit. You didn't see him going to the Fifth Circuit. They go to the Ninth Circuit, so of course they judge Schaub. But I think he wins this in the long run. I really do.
Larry Hogan, governor of Maryland, Republican, he may run primary President Trump. Good luck, Larry. Anyway, he said this on CBS this morning.
I think the president made some real mistakes here, and I don't think declaring this, using the declaration of emergency powers is the right thing to do, and I think it should be challenged. We've exaggerated what's going on at the border.
I don't know how much time he spent on the border, Tom. He's obviously Maryland is bordering on insanity with taxes, but it's not a border state.
I can guarantee you he hasn't been to the border. He hasn't talked to one man and woman in green. He certainly hasn't looked at the data on the border. You know, let's just look up the Border Patrol this past year. Arrest of MS-13 members up 170%. Seizure of fentanyl is up 184%. 17,000 criminals arrested crossing the border. ICE arrested 138,000 criminal aliens in this country here illegally that committed crimes. They didn't just appear here. They came through the southwest border. If anybody doesn't see it, they're ignoring the facts. And it disappoints me. Well, their state's considering a state sanctuary law right now.
Of course. Maryland, go all across Maryland. It's a haven for illegal immigrants. Same thing with Northern Virginia.
Definitely.
Fairfax County. Go out to Prince William County. I mean, this whole area is now dealing with
And I'm surprised Larry Hogan says this since they have a serious MS-13 problem in Maryland.
We had the murder. The girl stabbed how many times? I think it was in Maryland or Virginia, but it was a horrific crime. This is what Elizabeth Warren, of course, I won't do my impersonation, but you heard it during the break. It's actually pretty good.
Pretty good.
Tom, let's hear what she has to say.
What would constitute a national emergency?
Oh, let's do the list. Climate change, gun violence, student loan debt, right off the top.
Student loan debt.
It's incredible, you know. She talked about gun violence. Democrats just passed some legislation in the House that if an illegal alien attempts to buy a firearm, ATF's not even allowed to contact ICE. And she's talking about gun violence, so she wants to, take away the Second Amendment from the U.S. citizens, but it's perfectly okay for illegal aliens to try to purchase a gun, which is a felony. They want ICE to turn their back on felonies.
Oh, DUI, they don't want DUI to matter anymore. So if you run over someone, you're a legal immigrant, get to stay.
10,000 people a year died in DUI, and Menendez doesn't think that's a crime.
Tom, I also want to get your thoughts on this. Last Saturday in El Paso, Texas, we were just broadcasting, we saw leftist lunacy on full display. Protesters went into a Border Patrol museum and decided to deface pictures honoring fallen agents. But that's not all. They also decided to call Border Patrol agents murderers.
Actually, a lot of these Border Patrol agents are murderers. That's what they are. They have murdered families. They have murdered youth. They have slashed any humanitarian aid that's given to them at the border like water.
We need to push back in every way we can.
I don't know if that was an indigenous person. I'm not quite sure what was
First of all, I find it disgusting because they actually defaced a monument to 128 fallen heroes that died in line of duty to protect this country. They defaced that monument. They're ignorant because they don't know the facts of what they're saying. Everything they said, I watched that video, they're wrong. 100% of things they said are absolutely wrong. And they're cowards. And they're cowards, I say this because a lot of them wearing masks. If they really want to protest the Border Patrol, don't go to a museum that's not even owned by the Border Patrol and run by retirees. Go to a Border Patrol station and deface a Border Patrol station. Let's see how far they get with that. They won't. They're cowards. They're hiding, and they hide behind a false message to American people.
Tom Homan, they're either defacing statues honoring the end of World War II, ripping down statues, historical markers, or defacing monuments.
Not one of those protesters has a backbone or the bravery to wear that uniform and defend this country. I doubt anyone has ever served their country in any capacity.
Victimhood mentality. We started